points right now. He wants to be first so he can earn that seasonal qualification to get himself to the Players' Championship.
That's right.
He's on a good start right now.
He is absolutely on a good start, and he doesn't have to worry about Huey
Nope.
at this particular tournament, who's the #1 overall ranked player on our Open Series. You can see the rankings at the Players' Championship website on our homepage, and you can also follow along the standings on #SCGPC. On the left, he's going to have to defeat Justin Luttrell to make his path to the championship a little bit easier. He is on the red-white devotion deck that we've seen a little bit of here and there on the Open Series that Eric Smith and Taya Steele, I believe, both used to make the top 8 of the last Invitational. Justin Luttrell has the red-white devotion, and he begins with a turn 2 Ash Zealot. BBD's turn 2 is a Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, a little bit of a slower start for Brian, where his deck has 8 mana accelerants in it, but unfortunately does not start off with an Elvish Mystic or a Sylvan Caryatid, so he's going to have to play a fair game, for lack of a better term.
And Justin's going to play another Ash Zealot without having to fear Detention Sphere. He's just going to go ahead and play out another 2/2 First Strike Haster. BBD's going to have to play Fair Magic. He's going to have to play a 3-drop on turn 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. You see in Luttrell's hand right now, he's got 2 copies of Boros Reckoner and a Nykthos, where he could have dropped the Reckoner and then kind of worked his way towards a really big Nykthos draw. He opted to just go this route instead of just getting the damage in as fast as he can, as Brian's going to play a Domri.
And it is going to reveal a Pelucranos, which is extremely difficult for Justin's deck to deal with outside of Chain to the Rocks, which he only has 3 of. Sometimes you see the full 4. He only has 3 of in his main deck. Justin Luttrell has a couple of interesting 1-ofs in his deck. He does have 1 Perforos. He has 1 copy of Firemane Avenger.
Okay.
And he also has 1 Chandra Pyromaster among the cards that he is using to support his devotion to the God of the Forge.
I like Brian's attack here. I mean, it's pretty simplistic, realistically, that, you know, he attacks with the Scavenging Ooze because I can't really protect it properly. I can't protect the Domri properly with the Scavenging Ooze. I'd actually have to chump block and some other things that have to go right. So what Domri basically did there was draw a card and act as a fog, which is actually pretty good use
Gain
for
4 life draw cards, really good against a red-white devotion deck.
Yeah.
So looks like Justin drew himself a 2-drop, so he's going to be able to play both Boros Reckoner and Frostburn Weird off of that Nykthos that he played.
Yeah, I mean, Brian is in some serious trouble here, again, because he's not accelerating right now. You know, what he wants to be able to do is work his way towards a overloaded Mizzium Mortars.
Yeah.
Obviously, and he wants to be able to do that when he's above 4 life, so Boros Reckoner doesn't kill him. When he doesn't know there's another Boros Reckoner hiding out in Justin's hand. Brian's certainly behind right now. He didn't accelerate in anything impressive. Pelucranos will do a pretty nice job of kind of holding the fort, but he's really got to get something established here because, you know, with the Devotion deck, you know, if Justin draws a Fanatic or Stormbreath Dragon, things really start to spiral out of control in the next couple turns.
Yeah, absolutely. Any haste from Justin next turn, even if BBD ends up with Pelucranos in play, is just going to spell trouble. Pelucranos is not going to come down this turn. Instead, Temple of Abandon for Brian Braun-Duin. Taking a good long look at that scry, deciding how he wants to play the rest of this game. Decides to put it on the bottom. Not going to be good enough based on his game plan.
See if he has maybe a Mortars here. Mortars would actually be pretty big here. Killing something, like killing, and obviously anything but Reckoner, but just killing something so that a Scavenging Ooze can turn into a 3/3 and actually roadblock those Ash Zealots is going to be a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, he's going to be able to make that a 3/3, gain a life, and be able to take out one of these Ash Zealots, assuming, of course, that Justin himself does not have either a Mizzium Mortars or a Chain to the Rocks, of which he has 3 of each.
Now, something really scary happened here on Justin's side. You see Justin's going to attack with...
Did he keep the scry?
Yeah, he kept the scry, and that's actually terrifying because, you know, one of the things
dear.
that Brian's trying to avoid is just a big top deck of something huge. Fanatic, Stormbreath Dragon, even Perforos is pretty good right now. Chandra's perfectly reasonable. So to see him keep the scry with the Temple of Triumph, is pretty scary, actually.
Yeah, that's not good news for BBD. He sees the 5th land is going to keep the card on top pretty much immediately, too. It wasn't even a thought. It was so quick that I didn't even see it, so...
You have to imagine a Dragon or a Fanatic is coming. Fanatic would be for 3, 6, 7, 8, 9.
That's a few.
Yeah, that is a non-zero amount.
So BBD still desperate to dig himself out of the hole here, and overloaded Mizzium Mortars isn't going to be enough, almost certainly, as he is likely to take 2 damage somewhere over the course of the rest of the game. And so he just needs to add more fat to the board. But even at that, these Boros Reckoners, with BBD only sitting at 10 life. If he plays Pelucranos, he's still dead if he blocks both the Reckoners.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's
he would have to throw the Pelucranos in front of the Ash Zealot instead.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue right now, is that even if he plays Pelucranos, you know, part of the reason that Boros Reckoner is so good is because it's going to get into the red zone anyway, because none of the blocks will be bad, and as a result, things aren't really going to break his way. And of course, we know that Justin is empty-handed, but the top card of his deck is one that he kept there immediately with that Temple of Triumph Scry. So you have to assume, if you're Brian, something awful is coming from you this turn.
Yeah. 5 power, 5 toughness for 4 mana. Very good. Usually. I think he'd rather have an 0-5 here, honestly, just for this exact circumstance.
I'm trying to figure out
what is
about to come
that?
off
That's
the
a
top.
Chain to the Rocks, is what it looks like to me.
Removal spells are not bad here at all.
So he's deciding what he wants to chain to those rocks. My guess is it's going to be the Pelucranos, although it could be the Scavenging Ooze just to prevent the life gain.
Well, this looks like a little more expensive than Chain to the Rocks.
It did. I thought it was Chain to the Rocks, but I could be mistaken.
It might be Avenger.
It is. It is Avenger. I just didn't recognize the art.
Yeah.
There's Fire Main Avenger. There on the left. Gate Crash first pick.
Yes.
Absolutely. The Battalion Lightning Helix creature, sort of the flagship Battalion card when the set came out. Forgotten about much of the time because it is just a phantom monster.
I mean, it kind of sucks that this card didn't get to see more play through its lifespan, just because, you know, it's a cool card, you know, design-wise and everything that it does. It is a walking lightning helix. It is a flyer, so it's difficult to block. Cost it appropriately, but, you know, it's not a card that's on par with some of the other more popular standard cards that we've seen, like a Pelucranos, like a Boros Reckoner, you know, like a Thrag Tusk. You know, it just
or a
wasn't that powerful.
Stormbreath Dragon.
Yeah.
Even. You know, 4 mana 3/3, even with flying, just not good enough.
Not nowadays.
Not nowadays, man. When you got giant Pelucranoses and
other giant green monsters.
Back in
other
the day,
giant green monsters.
Back in the day, Phantom Monster was a perfectly serviceable Magic card.
This is true. Phantom Monster with text was even better.
Yeah.
Nowadays, no.
Not so much.
Maybe a 1-of in a deck. Might be right, might be wrong. Who knows?
But it's certainly good here, as BBD doesn't really have an answer to a 3/3 flyer. Although, to be honest, it could have been pretty much any 4-mana standard playable creature, and it would have probably done the same thing. Although this one's much fancier, as you see. This is the game day promo art, which means Justin had a good game day.
That's
the
true.
Gate Crash game day.
That is true. Stormbreath Dragon going to show up now. I'm really interested to see. I mean, because Brian can't attack, obviously.
Yeah, he just has to sort of stand in front of these 3 white creatures that he's facing down.
Now, the good thing for Brian, at least, is that the Fireman Adventure can't actually shoot anything down. Stormbreath Dragon, for a multitude of reasons. 4/4 protection from white. That's 2 reasons. Pelucranos 5/5, and Scavenging is a 4/4 right now. And Brian has a green mana open to activate that again if he needs to. Obviously, there are no creatures in the graveyard at this moment. The ones that are over there have been exiled. But as Justin goes a reaching there for the Nykthos, I can't imagine Brian feels good about this. I wouldn't feel good about that Hammer Furfuros.
So, do we know if he activated the Nykthos or if he just tapped it for colorless?
I believe he activated it. Yeah, you see him.
Okay.
He's
so
gonna
he did
activate
activate it for the 8 mana or 9 mana that it will provide. He's going to sacrifice a mountain and get an enchantment artifact creature golem.
That is colorless.
That is also colorless. Relevant, of course, for the protection on Stormbreath Dragon.
I learned that the hard way with Brave the Elements.
Yeah.
Protection from red normally pretty good against this deck.
Uh-oh.
My opponent made a token, and then I conceded, so that's fine. Hey, you gotta learn. You gotta learn the hard way sometimes.
And the only way you learn is by losing.
To be fair, I right-click conceded.
I learn a lot.
Yes.
I think is a nice way to say
that. Everybody's coming in the red zone, and now here's a trigger from the Fire Main. So this seems like the most obvious attack to make here if you're Justin.
Yep, just putting them all in. Look, Justin could have set that 3 damage somewhere to try to make BBD's blocks awkward, to try to kill one of these monsters, but he's just going to send it at BBD's face, I think. Do we know where the Fire Main Avenger trigger happened? I'm pretty sure that it happened just at BBD's face, but I could be wrong.
This is really interesting because I think there might be it might be within the realm of possibility that Justin can die
Next turn?
Possibly, because Brian's going to go down to 8, and then the Reckoners are going to deal 6 and put Brian down to 2.
And Justin's at 18, so he could take 4 from Dragon. The Scavenging Ooze will be a 5 at the end of this turn, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So BBD needs to find 4 more damage somewhere.
Okay, so he's going to remove with Scavenging Ooze. That's going to grow. Brian's going to go up to 3. There goes the Fire Main Avenger. Justin's life total, I'm fairly sure, is 18 after gaining life from the Avenger.
I agree. BBD is very close to killing Justin, pretty much out of nowhere. That looked like was that a Lightning Strike? I don't think he has Lightning Strike in his deck.
He has Flesh Blood.
Flesh Blood certainly will do it.
He has
Gore Clan Rampager would probably do it.
Yeah, okay, he's at 21 right now, not 18, so that probably changes things.
That changes things a lot. Yeah, he gained 3 life off of the Fire Main Avenger, so that certainly changes things a lot. If BBD has Flesh Blood and Gore Clan Rampager, the math gets a lot easier. He just does it.
Yeah. I think he would have attacked faster.
Yeah, but he's trying to figure out the math right now. So BBD has a 5/5, a 5/5, and a 4/4 in play, representing 14 damage. He also has a Mutavault. That's representing 16 damage. He needs to find 6 more damage somewhere.
5 and 5 is 10, 14, 15, 16. This is 16, so he needs to be able to deal 5 more.
Yep. And here's Gore Clan Rampager on Stormbreath Dragon.
He has it in
and he's able to he's able to remove the Gore Clan Rampager to pump the Scavenging Ooze and remove the Fire Main Avenger.
Is
that enough?
4, 5, 6, 7?
No, this is not. This is 1 short.
No, the Ooze activation. So the Ooze is a 4, 5, 6. It's a 10. 10 plus 5 is 15. Plus 4 is 19. It's 21.
That is 21?
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. 5 plus 9 plus 4 plus 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot of damage.
BBD won that game out of nowhere.
Yeah. That is a lot of damage in one turn.
That was a lot of look at that.
Pretty hard not to smile.
Yeah, the BBD grin is one of my favorites.
That's why I was a little bit scared on Justin's turn. I felt like, it was when I said he made that attack, it was kind of an obvious attack, but just attacking with everyone. I think that's part of the problem with it, right? In that it's so obvious. It's like, yeah, just turn everyone sideways and then stuff's going to happen. I don't think I can die on the no. I can die on the counter swing, which is not good. And you see Brian kind of smiling, saying, I think I may have gotten away with one there.
Yeah.
Where maybe you were a little bit too aggressive. Now, to be fair, I think one thing that we talked about in the middle of that game was when Justin played a Temple of Triumph, and he immediately kept his card on top. The card that he kept on top was a
Fire Main Avenger.
And it didn't really have a very large effect on that game.
I agree.
The 3 damage dealt, the 3 life gained had basically no impact. It ran into a Stormbreath Dragon, so it suicide attacked. Maybe a questionable keep with the Scry off of the Scry land there.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that the Hammer of Perforos, very powerful card. It's certainly something you want against green-red monsters.
Yep.
But perhaps you keep either a Boros Reckoner back and send in the Elemental or vice versa.
Yeah, by leaving the Boros Reckoners back, it makes it so that Brian can't actually make a profitable attack with any of his ground creatures, the Scavenging Ooze, and the Pelucranos. Of course, he can trample over a Gore Clan Rampager, but he's going to have to assign lethal damage over to the Reckoner. So, I think maybe his attack was a little bit hasty, but either way, BBD is going to steal game number 1.
From the jaws of defeat does Brian Braun-Duin draw that game out, and he will be on the draw for game 2.
That means Luttrell's going to start things. We'll take a look at his sideboard of 2 Wear and Tear, 2 Assemble the Legion, 3 Anger the Gods, 2 Warleader's Helix, 2 Boros Charm, 2 Glare of Heresy, a Chain to the Rocks, and an Elspeth. Chain to the Rocks is the easy one. Elspeth is quite good in this matchup too because BBD's creatures are so large. Then things get a little bit hairy. 2 Wear and Tear I don't like in this matchup. Assemble Legion is super slow and is actually against mono black, so that's going to stay at home. Anger the Gods actually isn't going to kill very much, so that'll probably stay at home. Warleader's Helix is pretty good here, but it's expensive. So, do you actually want that effect of dealing 4 and gaining 4? I think that's arguable. 2 copies of Boros Charm, not really great, and obviously Glare of Heresy is not going to do very much here at all. So of these cards, the Singleton Chain the Rocks is going to come in. I expect the Elspeth to come in, and then maybe we'll see copies of Warleader's Helix.
The rest of the cards, either Anger of the Gods, Warleader's Helix, Boros Charm, are all sort of corner cases that can be very good in certain situations. Like BBD's like Elf, Caryatid, and Justin's first play is Anger, then obviously it's great.
Yeah.
But there's going to be situations where BBD's just got a 5/5 in play and Anger is just bad.
Yeah, and I think that situation is going to happen more often than not, where Anger is not going to actually kill the things that it wants to kill, which is Pelucranos, which is Rampager, Scavenging Ooze, things of that nature. I think that's where the problem lies with that card in this matchup.
Back on BBD's side of things, we've seen this sideboard today already, and one of the cards that I like the most in this sideboard is Destructive Revelry.
Yep.
And he saw Hammer of Perforos, and he can pretty much guess that Chain of the Rocks is going to be
It
in
is
there.
a safe assumption.
So I think that those two destructive revelries will almost certainly be coming in. BBD saw a lot of Ash Zealots,
Yeah.
and so these two shocks could reasonably be coming in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I'm trying to think of what other targets there are.
Fnatic
in the
of
deck.
Mogus,
Yeah,
and
Fnatic
like
is okay. Is an okay target.
if he happens to get a little fancy with his Frostburn Weirds, or if he expects
Sure.
Mutavault, those are also options. But yeah, it's a little bit corner case, as is Plummet, very corner case against just Stormbreath Dragon.
Yep.
Mizzium Mortars are probably going to come in, though, because those are very good
Great
in
in
this
this
matchup. And Chandra Pyromaster is a possibility, just as more card advantage, although I'm not sure that this matchup really revolves around card advantage. And even if it did, Domery Raid is already in BBD's deck.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he needs additional Planeswalkers, and by adding Planeswalkers to your deck, then you're basically removing the likelihood that Chandra's going to hit often by taking away some of the creature density in your deck. It feels like Brian's going to be adding spells to his deck after sideboard, so I wouldn't be surprised actually to see him potentially trimming down on a couple of Domries, because the percentage chance of him actually hitting consistently with Domry seems like it's going to go down with the way that he's sideboarding.
The remaining cards in BBD's sideboard are Mistcutter Hydra and Rurikthar, neither of which are particularly for this matchup, although I will point out that Rurikthar is a 6/6, which is bigger than everything ever.
That's true. It is very large. It can also get in the way of a Stormbreath Dragon because it does have reach.
And it also has vigilance.
Yeah.
So, it can get in there and battle while still playing defense, which is not unreasonable. I think 6/6 for 6 isn't where he wants to be.
No, I don't think so. But I would like to see how his deck plays when he actually does have mana acceleration, because last game he didn't. Of course, he was able to win that game, but I think his deck plays much differently when he's actually accelerating to his threats.
Yeah, absolutely, especially on the draw,
Yeah.
when he's able to get back to mana parity. So it looks like Justin's going to be on the mulligan. BBD looks at a grip and decides to keep it. I saw at least a Scryland.
Good start.
That's a good start.
That's definitely a good start.
It is not an Elvish Mystic start, though, so we have to hope that we
True.
have the Sylvan Caryatid for your mana acceleration.
We'll see if he does have it.
So this Green-Red Monsters deck, I did a deck tech with CVM earlier today. It may have aired already here on
we've already
SCG
shown it at
Live.
least once.
First of all, fabulous beard. Unbelievable.
That's
That's
unquestionable.
unbelievable beardsmanship
Yeah.
out of CVM. It was mostly, that was what I was really focused on during the deck tech, but we talked a little bit about the deck. And when we talked about the deck, he was super on Xenagos.
Okay.
Not just as a value card, which is what I've always considered Xenagos to be, sort of a Huntmaster of the Fells-ish kind of card, where
Okay.
it's just like, it has a body attached to it, and then they kill it immediately, and you still got the body sitting around kind of
Okay.
thing. Like a 1.5 for 1
Sure.
in a green-red deck.
Sure.
But he really likes it for every aspect of the card. He thinks that it is incredibly good, first of all, against control, as a way to apply pressure without having to commit more to the board. And also likes the mana ability to be able to pump his Stormbreath Dragons and Prolucranoses.
That's fair. I mean, it definitely does generate a lot of mana in the deck, and this is a mana-hungry deck. There's a reason that they are playing 8 Accelerants in their deck. And so they can not only play those monstrosity creatures ahead of schedule, but to actually be able to, influence monstrosity early on in the game, to be able to activate Prolucranos for a relevant amount. Same thing with Stormbreath Dragon. You see Justin going to take a mulligan down to 5 here.
Yeah,
so
his hand was 2 lands, 2 Fnatic of Mogus, and 2 more spells he couldn't cast.
Not you. I don't want you.
Not really where he wants to be in the matchup, where he thinks he might be the aggressor. The assignment of role was sort of up in the air in the last game as BBD sort of won out of nowhere.
The issue here for Justin is that, one of the things about Red White Devotion, as powerful as this deck is that it's not a deck that mulligans particularly well. It's kind of like a combo deck for the most part, where you're trying to find a Nykthos and the necessary tools to put that together, and then the thing that you're trying to explode to. That's a lot harder to do on 5 cards as opposed to 7.
Yeah, there's no card advantage in Justin's deck save for the 1 Chandra Pyromaster, which might have been sided out in this matchup.
Doesn't have a ton of targets here.
And it looks like we have 2 lands, 2 Chain to the Rocks, and Elspeth.
Yeah.
2 mountains, 2
Yeah.
Chain to the Rocks, and Elspeth.
And for Justin, you have to keep this hand because you do have 2 removal spells, and Elspeth is very, very good in this matchup. Brian going to start from the Elvish Mystic, so acceleration on the draw actually really important.
He top decks Mizzium Mortars. He's going to be able to kill this Mystic if he wants to.
Truthfully, I feel like if you're in the situation that Justin's in, where things are kind of going badly for you because you're on a mulligan at 5, I might actually consider pulling the trigger on that, just so that the opponent doesn't get too far ahead, which is what Brian's going to try to do here with the Domry.
Yep, and things are going to start cascading from here as we see Pelucranos off the top, assuming BBD has an untapped land in his hand. That's going to come down on turn 3 against a mana-deficient opponent.
And like, I don't love in most cases of, killing the mana accelerant right away, especially with a card that's as powerful as Busy Mortars is. But given this situation of, I'm on a mulligan to 5, I have a removal spell for an elf, maybe I can buy some time to work myself out of this draw if Brian kept kind of a sketchy hand that was relying on a mana accelerant. Now, I feel like it's too late to Mizzy Mortars that because Brian actually has a real threat in play in that Domri. It's going to be ticking up. You see he's going to play a Scryland first and then tick it up because he knows what he's going to find, which is Elvish Mystic, and just replace the previous Elvish Mystic. But now Domri's starting to tick up to 5. And yes, these Chain of the Rocks are going to come in and be able to kill things, but they can't actually kill Domri. So we're probably going to see a Domri ultimate this game.
Yeah, probably. Although we do have Boros Reckoner here. That's going to be able to start pressuring whatever BBD plays next, which he's hoping is the Pelucranos because the pair of Chain of the Rocks are now active.
Yeah.
So if Pelucranos does come down here, it's possible that Boros Reckoner could keep the Domri raid in check.
It's certainly possible. You have to believe if you're Brian, thinking about, okay, what did Justin keep on this mulligan to 5? I know that he has Chain of the Rocks in his list. I don't know how many of these lists play Elspeth. I don't think that's an industry standard at this point. But, he has to assume that there's probably at least one Chain of the Rocks maybe hanging out in my opponent's hand. Drawing the 3rd land was allowed him to deploy the Boros Reckoner, but there's only like a range of cards that I think Justin can have at this point.
So we play Stormbreath Dragon. Stormbreath Dragon swings in for 4.
Yeah, and I
think
like
that this
play.
is going to be a fight.
Yeah.
With the protection from white Stormbreath Dragon on the Boros Reckoner. So he trades the Domri raid straight up for the Boros Reckoner, and he still ends up with the Dragon in play. I like that play a lot.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. I think he's perfectly happy with that exchange of cards and not overvaluing his Planeswalker there. It's already drawn me 2 cards. I've accelerated myself to a Dragon. That's almost impossible for Justin to get off of the board. And now your Reckoner's gone. So you don't have any offense, you don't have any devotion, and you don't have a good Chain to the Rocks target.
Yep. BBD could just not play any more permanents for the rest of this game and probably be in okay shape.
I agree. I think he is going to continue to cast permanents.
I agree. Yeah, I think that is probably a better choice because Justin will eventually get up to Elspeth mana.
Sylvan Caryatid going to join the party. It looks like we might see Pelucranos here as well.
Pelucranos appearance. That will be not long for this world as it's going to get changed to a boulder.
Just trying to think of the running outs that Justin can use to get back into this game. The problem here for him is that we're 1 mana away. Actually, we're no mana away. All the mana that is necessary is in play for him to be able to activate the monstrosity on Stormbreath Dragon. And Justin can only get 1 card out of his hand because he can only cast 1 Chain to the Rocks right now. And heaven forbid you have to Chain to the Rocks that Elvish Mystic and hope he doesn't have another land because you're facing lethal that way anyway. So I think the old rock in a hard place is a fun thing to say as he's casting Chain to the Rocks.
Absolutely.
Probably his last spell.
That's quite the fitting card to Chain to the Rocks, too.
I agree. Put that Hydra over there.
Yeah, exactly.
For a moment.
Just for a little bit. But BBD is going to be able to get to 7 mana, monstrous this dragon pretty much immediately. Attack for 1 million. Mizzy Mortars was the card that Justin could have drawn, but he does not. Reveals his hand to the victorious Braun-Duin.
Brian going to move on to 9-1 now. 9-1's going to put him in really good shape. Again,